Pay very close attention to what I am about to tell you, because this single idea will crack open a truth you have been running from your entire life. You have been taught, no, you have been programmed to believe that being nice is a virtue. That kindness is the golden road to respect, to love, to success. That if you just keep smiling, keep agreeing, keep sacrificing yourself for the comfort of others, eventually the world will reward you for it. And you believed it. Of course you did. Everyone around you believed it too. But let me ask you something that will sting. Look at the people who hold real power, the ones who sit at the head of the table, the ones whose names carry weight when they walk into a room, the ones who shape decisions, who move resources, who bend outcomes. Are they nice? Are they the agreeable, soft-spoken, always accommodating people who never ruffle a feather? Or are they something else entirely? You already know the answer, and that answer should terrify you, not because the world is cruel, though it is, but because you have been playing a game with the wrong rules. You brought a smile to a chess match. You brought compliance to a war. And now you are wondering why you keep losing. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago. While the rest of the world was busy writing poetry about honor and chivalry and the goodness of the human heart, Machiavelli was sitting in a cold room in Florence, stripped of his title, exiled from the political world he had served, writing the most dangerous book ever committed to paper. And in that book, The Prince, he laid bare a truth so uncomfortable that it has been banned, burned, and condemned for centuries. Not because it was wrong, but because it was right. Here is what he said, distilled to its sharpest blade: "It is far safer to be feared than loved." Read that again. Let it settle into the marrow of your bones. Not because you need to become a tyrant, not because love is worthless, but because Machiavelli was not talking about emotions. He was talking about architecture, the architecture of power. And in that architecture, niceness is not a foundation. It is a trapdoor. You see, the word nice has a history most people never bother to learn. It comes from the Latin word nescius, which means ignorant, unknowing, foolish. Somewhere across the centuries, this word that once described weakness was repackaged and sold to you as strength. And you bought it. You bought it at the cost of your ambition, your boundaries, your self-respect, and your potential. This is not a motivational speech. This is a diagnosis. Right now, as you are listening to this, there is a pattern running in the background of your life that you may not even be fully aware of. It operates silently, automatically, like a program installed so deep in your operating system that you have mistaken it for your personality. And this pattern has a name: people-pleasing. You say yes when you mean no. You smile when you are furious. You abandon your own agenda to serve someone else's. You shrink in meetings. You soften your opinions. You laugh at jokes that are not funny. You tolerate behavior that corrodes your dignity. And at the end of every day, you tell yourself that this makes you a good person. But here is the question Machiavelli would ask you if he could sit across from you right now, his dark eyes cutting through every comfortable lie you have ever told yourself. If being nice is so powerful, why do nice people keep getting passed over? Why do nice people keep getting used? Why do nice people keep building empires for other people while their own kingdom crumbles? The answer is not complicated. It is just painful. Nice people are not respected. They are tolerated. There is an enormous, unbridgeable gap between being respected and being tolerated. And most nice people spend their entire lives on the wrong side of that gap without ever realizing it. They mistake tolerance for love. They mistake being needed for being valued. They mistake the absence of conflict for the presence of peace. Let me paint you a picture. You are in a meeting at work. Someone proposes an idea that you know, in your gut, is flawed. You have the insight, you have the data, you have the experience to see the cracks, but what do? You nod. You smile. You say, "That sounds great." Maybe you add a soft qualifier. I just wonder if we should also consider. Trailing off before your thought is even fully formed, because the moment you sensed even a whisper of tension in the room, your programming kicked in. Avoid conflict. Be nice. Do not make waves. And what happens? Someone else, someone less qualified, less insightful, but far more willing to speak with conviction, takes the floor. They say what you were thinking. Maybe they even say it poorly. But they say it with force, with certainty, with the unapologetic weight of someone who believes they have a right to be heard. And they get the credit. They get the promotion. They get the influence. You get the reputation of being easy to work with, which is corporate language for irrelevant. Machiavelli wrote that a prince who tries to be good in every way is bound to come to ruin among so many who are not good. This was not cynicism. This was observation. He had watched princes fall. He had seen empires crumble. He had studied the mechanics of human power with the precision of a surgeon cutting through tissue to find the tumor underneath. And what he found was this: goodness without strategy is self-destruction. Now I need you to understand something critical before we go any further. This is not an argument against being a good person. This is not a license for cruelty. This is not a manual for becoming the villain. The world has enough villains. What the world lacks, what you lack, is the ability to be good and powerful at the same time. Because somewhere along the way, you were told those two things were incompatible. That you had to choose, be kind or be strong, be gentle or be respected, be agreeable or be successful. That is the lie. That is the single most destructive lie that was ever whispered into the ear of an ambitious person. And it was whispered by people who had every reason to keep you small. Think about it. Who benefits when you stay nice? Who profits from your compliance? Your boss, who underpays you but keeps you around because you never complain? Your friends who drain your energy but never reciprocate? Your family members who cross your boundaries because they know you will never enforce them? The entire social machine that feeds on obedient, predictable, controllable people? Every system, every institution, every hierarchy on this planet has a vested interest in keeping you agreeable. Because agreeable people are manageable. And manageable people do not disrupt. And people who do not disrupt do not rise. Machiavelli saw this mechanism with terrifying clarity. He lived in a world of popes and princes and powerful families who smiled at each other across banquet tables while plotting assassinations in the hallways. He understood that the surface of human interaction is a theater, a beautifully constructed performance. And the people who mistake the performance for reality are the ones who end up as pawns. You have been a pawn. Not because you are unintelligent, not because you lack talent or drive or vision, but because you have been playing the role that was assigned to you. The nice one. The agreeable one. The one who goes along. The one who puts others first. The one who sacrifices without being asked and then wonders why no one notices. Here is the hard truth. They notice. They just do not care. Because in the calculus of power, sacrifice without leverage is invisible. It has no weight. It moves nothing. It shifts no balance. It is like pouring water onto sand, absorbed instantly, leaving no trace. Machiavelli would tell you this: the world does not reward good intentions. The world rewards effective action. And effective action requires something that nice people are terrified of. It requires the willingness to disappoint others, the willingness to say no, the willingness to hold space for tension, the willingness to prioritize your own agenda without guilt, the willingness to be misunderstood and not immediately rush to explain yourself. In short, it requires the willingness to stop being nice and start being strategic. And that word, strategic, is where the transformation begins. Because strategy is not cruelty. Strategy is not manipulation. Strategy is not Machiavellian in the cartoonish, villainous way that word has been twisted by people who never actually read Machiavelli. Strategy is the art of understanding the game you are in and making moves that serve your interests while navigating the interests of others. A chess player is not evil for thinking 3 moves ahead. A general is not wicked for studying the terrain before battle. A negotiator is not manipulative for understanding what the other side wants. They are simply competent. They are simply awake. They are simply refusing to be naive. And naivety, not kindness, not goodness, not compassion. Naivety is the true enemy. Naivety is what masquerades as niceness. It is what hides behind the smile. It is what makes you believe that if you just keep giving, the world will eventually give back. It will not. The world takes from those who offer and respects those who command. Now let me take you deeper. Because the roots of this pattern go further than most people are willing to dig. You did not wake up one morning and decide to become a people pleaser. This was not a conscious choice. It was an adaptation. Somewhere in your childhood, you learned that the safest way to navigate a world you could not control was to make yourself agreeable. Maybe you had a parent whose love felt conditional, warm when you complied, cold when you did not. Maybe you grew up in a home where conflict was explosive, and your survival strategy was to become invisible, to smooth every edge, to make sure no one had a reason to turn their volatility toward you. Maybe you were the child who was praised for being good and easy and no trouble at all, and you internalized that praise as the price of admission for love. Whatever the origin, the program was installed early. And like all programs installed in childhood, it runs so deep that you cannot distinguish it from who you are. You think niceness is your nature. It is not. It is your strategy. A strategy that served you when you were small and powerless. A strategy that is now destroying you as an adult, with agency, with options, with the capacity to choose differently. Machiavelli himself was shaped by adversity. He was tortured, exiled, and stripped of everything he had built. And from that crucible, he did not emerge softer. He emerged sharper. He did not retreat into niceness. He retreated into clarity. He used his suffering not as a reason to become bitter, but as raw material for understanding the true mechanics of human power. And what he wrote from that place of painful clarity has guided strategists, leaders, and thinkers for 500 years. You are at a similar crossroads, not as dramatic perhaps, but the principle is the same. You can continue as you are, smiling, accommodating, slowly disappearing into the background of your own life. Or you can use the discomfort you feel right now, in this very moment, as fuel, as ignition, as the spark that lights a transformation so profound that the person who finishes this video will be unrecognizable to the person who started it. Here is what I know about you. You are tired, not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. You are tired in your soul. Tired of performing, tired of giving without receiving, tired of watching bolder, louder, less considerate people take what should be yours. Tired of the gap between who you are in your head and who you are in the world. Tired of the quiet resentment that builds and has nowhere to go because you have sealed every exit with a smile. That tiredness is not weakness. That tiredness is a signal. It is your authentic self, buried under years of accommodation, sending you a message that you have been ignoring. This is not working anymore, and it never was. It just took you this long to see it. Machiavelli wrote that men are so simple and so obedient to present necessities that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone ready to be deceived. You have been the one ready to be deceived. Deceived by the myth that niceness equals goodness. Deceived by the promise that sacrifice would be rewarded. Deceived by the comfortable fantasy that if you just kept giving, the world would eventually notice and give back. The world noticed. It just decided you were a resource to be extracted, not a person to be respected. But that ends here. If you have understood what I have told you so far, truly understood it, not with your mind, but with the part of you that already knew this was true before you pressed play, then something is shifting. Something quiet and dangerous and irreversible. A door is opening that cannot be closed. Continue watching, because what comes next will give you the architecture, the blueprint, the weapons. And when you have them, nothing and no one will make you shrink again. There is a concept in psychology called the fawn response. You may know about fight, flight, and freeze, the three primal reactions to threat. But there is a fourth, and it is the one that defines the nice person's entire existence: fawning. It is the instinct to appease the threat, to make yourself smaller, to become whatever the threatening person needs you to be so that they have no reason to harm you. In the wild, it looks like a prey animal going limp in the jaws of a predator. In your life, it looks like agreeing with your boss when you know he is wrong. It looks like laughing at a joke that was actually an insult directed at you. It looks like thanking someone for crumbs of attention that you would never accept if you had a shred of self-worth left. The fawn response was useful when you were a child, when you were dependent, when your survival literally depended on the goodwill of people who had power over you. But you are not a child anymore. And the predators in your adult life, the ones who exploit your niceness, who take advantage of your compliance, who mistake your gentleness for permission, they are not threats you need to fawn before. They are opponents you need to outmaneuver. And outmaneuvering them begins with understanding the game. Machiavelli wrote, "The prince not as a manual for tyranny, but as a mirror." A mirror held up to the way power actually operates, as opposed to the way moralists and philosophers wished it operated. He did not invent the rules of power. He simply refused to pretend they did not exist. And that refusal, that cold, unflinching honesty, is what made his work immortal. Because 500 years later, the game has not changed. The players have different names. The thrones look different. But the fundamental dynamics, who gets power, who keeps it, and who loses it, operate on exactly the same principles. And the first principle, the one that this entire video is built upon, is this: the game does not reward the meek. It devours them, not with malice, not with cruelty, but with the simple, mechanical indifference of a system that responds to force, not to feelings. A river does not hate the stone it wears away. It simply follows the path of least resistance. And if you are offering no resistance, if your niceness has made you the path of least resistance for everyone around you, then the river of life will flow through you, carry away everything of value, and leave you hollowed out. This is not a threat. This is physics. Social physics. The same laws that Machiavelli observed in the courts of Florence and Rome. The same laws that Robert Greene catalogued in his study of historical power. The same laws that every person who has ever risen from obscurity to significance has understood, either consciously or instinctively. And now, you are going to understand them too. I want you to think about the most powerful person you know personally. Not a celebrity, not a politician, someone in your actual life. Your boss, a family member, a friend who always seems to command attention. Now ask yourself, what is different about them? Not on the surface, beneath it. What is the quality that separates them from you? It is not intelligence. You are intelligent. It is not talent. You have talent. It is not luck. Luck is a factor, but it is never the deciding factor. It is this: they have given themselves permission to prioritize their own interests. They have decided, at some fundamental level, that their needs matter, that their time has value, that their voice deserves to be heard, that their boundaries are not negotiable. And they communicate this, not through words, but through 1,000 tiny signals that their entire being broadcasts every moment of every day. Their posture says it. Their eye contact says it. Their willingness to pause before responding says it. Their ability to sit in silence without rushing to fill it says it. Their capacity to say no without guilt says it. Their refusal to shrink in the presence of authority says it. And your niceness has been saying the opposite. Every day, in every interaction, to every person you meet. That changes now. If you have felt a shift as you have been listening, a tightening in your chest, a heat behind your eyes, a voice in your head that is whispering, "Finally, someone is saying it," then you are ready. Stay with me. The architecture of your transformation begins in the next chapter. And by the time we are done, you will not just understand power, you will embody it. Now that the illusion is cracked, let us examine what lies beneath. Because understanding that niceness is a trap is only the first step. The second step, the one that separates those who merely realize the truth from those who actually transform their lives, is understanding the specific mechanisms through which niceness destroys your power. And these mechanisms are not abstract. They are concrete. They operate in your life every single day, and once you see them, you will recognize them in every interaction you have ever had. Machiavelli identified something in human nature that most philosophers before him refused to acknowledge. People do not respond to goodness. They respond to strength. This is not an opinion. This is an observation drawn from centuries of political history, tribal behavior, social dynamics, and the fundamental wiring of the human brain. When someone encounters pure, unguarded niceness, without any edge, without any boundary, without any sign that this person could, if necessary, bare their teeth, something primal activates, not respect, not gratitude, but assessment. And the assessment is this: safe to exploit. This is the first mechanism. Let us call it the predator's calculation. In nature, predators do not attack the strongest member of the herd. They watch, they observe, they look for the one that limps, the one that strays, the one that shows vulnerability without awareness. In human social dynamics, the predator's calculation operates with identical precision, except it is rarely conscious. People do not wake up in the morning and think, "Today I am going to exploit the nice person in my life." It is subtler than that. It is instinctive, automatic. When you present yourself as endlessly accommodating, endlessly forgiving, endlessly available, you are not signaling virtue. You are signaling that there are no consequences. And where there are no consequences, there is no respect. Think about the people in your life who have taken the most from you. The ones who borrowed and never returned. The ones who called only when they needed something. The ones who dismissed your feelings, your time, your boundaries, over and over again. Were they doing this because they are inherently evil? Some, perhaps, but most of them were simply responding to the signal you were broadcasting: I will absorb this. I will not retaliate. I will not withdraw. I will remain nice. You trained them to treat you that way. Every time you forgave without consequence, you taught them that your forgiveness was free. Every time you said, "It is okay," when it was not okay, you taught them that your feelings were negotiable. Every time you stayed when you should have walked away, you taught them that your presence had no price. Machiavelli wrote about this with ruthless precision. He observed that men judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see, but few can feel. What he meant was this: people respond to what they perceive, not to what you intend. Your intention may be pure, your kindness may be genuine, your desire to maintain harmony may come from a place of real love, but none of that matters if the perception is weakness. And in a world that judges by the eye, by appearances, by signals, by the energy you project, unguarded niceness will always be perceived as weakness. This brings us to the second mechanism, the erosion of authority. Authority is not given, it is projected. It emanates from a specific kind of presence, a presence that communicates without words that this person has limits that should not be tested. This person has a center of gravity that does not shift at the first sign of pressure. This person will not bend themselves into a pretzel just to make you comfortable. Nice people erode their own authority constantly in ways so small they barely notice. They laugh nervously when delivering a serious point. They qualify every statement with disclaimers. They apologize before expressing a need. They use phrases like, "I might be wrong, but," or "Sorry, I just think," or "This is probably a dumb question, but." Each of these micro-surrenders seems harmless on its own, but compound them over weeks, months, years, and they create a cumulative portrait in the minds of everyone around you. A portrait of someone who does not fully trust their own voice, someone who is always bracing for rejection, someone who can be interrupted, overridden, overlooked. Compare this to the person in the room who speaks with unshakable calm, who does not soften their opinions with apologies, who pauses before responding, not to formulate a nicer way to say it, but because they know their silence carries weight, who makes direct eye contact and holds it, who says, "I disagree," without following it immediately with a bridge back to consensus. That person is not necessarily smarter than you. They are not necessarily more talented. They are simply projecting a different signal. And that signal commands a fundamentally different response from the world. Machiavelli would recognize this instantly. He wrote extensively about the concept of virtù, a word that in his usage did not mean moral virtue, but rather a combination of strength, decisiveness, adaptability, and the willingness to act boldly when the moment demands it. Virtù was the quality that separated the ruler who thrived from the ruler who fell. And its opposite was not wickedness. Its opposite was passivity, hesitation, the refusal to act decisively for fear of being judged. This is exactly what niceness produces in you, a state of perpetual hesitation, a constant scanning of the social environment for signs of disapproval, a reflexive contortion of your authentic self to fit whatever shape the room seems to demand. And while you are busy contorting, the people with virtù, the people who have decided that their own judgment is trustworthy and their own voice is worth hearing, are advancing. Let me show you how this plays out in a scene you will recognize. You are at dinner with friends. The conversation turns to a topic you care deeply about. You have a perspective, a real, considered, nuanced perspective that differs from the group consensus. You feel it rising in your chest. The words are forming. And then, you scan the table. You read the mood. You calculate the social cost. And you swallow it. You nod along. You agree. Or worse, you laugh and change the subject. And later, in the car, in bed, in the shower, you replay the conversation and feel the hot sting of self-betrayal. You could have said something. You should have said something. But you chose comfort over truth. Again, that feeling, that specific, corrosive feeling of having silenced yourself to keep the peace, is the tax you pay for niceness, and it compounds with interest. Every time you swallow your truth, the next truth becomes harder to speak. Every time you defer, the next moment of deference requires less thought. The automation deepens. The muscle of self-expression atrophies, until one day you realize that you do not even know what your opinions are anymore, because you have spent so long mirroring everyone else's that your own reflection has disappeared. Now let us look at the third mechanism, the invisible contract. Every nice person carries this contract, even though they never signed it and no one else agreed to its terms. The contract goes something like this. I will give you my time, my energy, my attention, my accommodation, my labor, my emotional support, my forgiveness, my patience, and in return, you will love me, respect me, value me, and never leave me. This is the unspoken deal. And it is a catastrophic deal, because the other party does not know it exists. You have been operating under terms that exist only in your head. You have been keeping a ledger that no one else can see. And every time someone fails to repay what you believe they owe, every time they take your kindness for granted, every time they do not reciprocate your effort, every time they choose someone else over you, you feel betrayed, hurt, resentful. But from their perspective, nothing was ever owed, because nothing was ever explicitly negotiated. This is not a failure of their character. This is a failure of your strategy. Because relationships, like politics, do not operate on unspoken assumptions. They operate on clearly communicated terms, on visible boundaries, on explicit expectations. Machiavelli understood that treaties between princes were only as strong as the consequences of breaking them. A treaty without enforcement is not a treaty. It is a wish. And your invisible contract is just that, a wish dressed up as an agreement. So here is what happens. The nice person gives and gives and gives, silently accumulating resentment. They smile while the fire builds behind their eyes, and then one day, inevitably, predictably, they explode. The rage that has been compressed for months or years detonates in a single moment, usually over something trivial, and everyone around them is stunned, confused, because to them, nothing happened. To them, you were fine yesterday. To them, you have just transformed from the agreeable, easygoing person they knew into someone irrational and emotional. And the cruelest irony of all, that explosion, which is actually a lifetime of suppressed truth finally escaping, confirms the very thing you were trying to avoid. They conclude that you are unstable, difficult, unpredictable, and they pull away. Not because you were honest, but because your honesty came too late and in the wrong form. This is the cycle that niceness creates: suppression, then eruption, accommodation, then resentment, compliance, then collapse. And each time the cycle repeats, it carves a deeper groove in your psychology, making it harder and harder to break free. Let us talk about the fourth mechanism, the forfeiture of desire. Nice people are trained to minimize their own wants, to feel guilty for ambition, to frame every desire through the lens of, but what about everyone else? If you want a promotion, you immediately think about the colleague who also wants it and wonder if it would be selfish to compete. If you want a bigger life, you immediately think about the people who might feel left behind if you grew. If you want to set a boundary, you immediately calculate the emotional cost to the other person and decide it is too high. Over time, this habit of self-suppression does not just limit your behavior. It reshapes your identity. You begin to lose contact with what you actually want. Your desires become whispers. Your ambitions become fantasies that you entertain in private but never pursue in public. You become the background character in your own story, always supporting, never starring, always cheering for someone else's dream, while yours gathers dust in a corner of your mind that you have forgotten how to visit. Machiavelli warned against this with a metaphor that still echoes 500 years later. He said that fortune is like a river in flood. When it rages, it destroys everything in its path. But the wise leader does not simply accept the flood. He builds levees in advance. He prepares. He asserts his will against the current. Those who leave themselves exposed, those who take no action, who simply accept what comes, are the ones who are swept away. Your niceness has left you exposed. Every time you deferred your own needs to serve someone else's, you dismantled another section of your levee. Every time you put yourself last, you widen the channel through which other people's priorities flood into your life. And now the river is raging, and you are standing in it wondering why you are drowning. Here is the fifth mechanism, the most insidious of all, the identity trap. At some point, being nice stopped being something you do and became something you are. It fused with your sense of self so completely that the thought of not being nice triggers an existential crisis. If I am not the nice one, Who am I? If I stop accommodating everyone, will anyone still love me? If I start saying what I really think, will I even recognize myself? This is the trap. Because niceness is not your identity. It is your armor. And like all armor, it was designed not to protect you from the world, but to protect the world from your truth. You put it on so young that you have forgotten it is a costume. But it is. And underneath it, there is someone far more interesting, far more complex, far more powerful than the smiling, agreeable, harmless version you have been presenting to the world. Machiavelli never wrote about authenticity in the language we use today, but he understood its inverse perfectly. He understood what happens to a leader who wears a mask for so long that the mask becomes the face. Such a leader, he observed, loses the ability to act decisively because every action must first be filtered through the question, what would the mask do? What would the nice version of me say? How can I respond in a way that maintains the performance? And while you are deliberating, while you are running every impulse through the filter of acceptability, the moment passes. The opportunity dissolves. The other person fills the vacuum you left, because in the arena of power, hesitation is forfeiture, and niceness is nothing if not institutionalized hesitation. Now, let us bring this into the arenas where it matters most. In the professional world, the nice person is the one who works the hardest and gets recognized the least. They volunteer for tasks no one else wants. They stay late. They help colleagues at the expense of their own projects. They avoid negotiating their salary because it feels confrontational. They accept feedback without pushback, even when that feedback is unfair. And they are perpetually shocked when the promotion goes to someone who, by their metrics, deserved it less. But here is what they do not understand. Promotions do not go to the most deserving. They go to the most visible, the most assertive, the ones who have made their value impossible to ignore. Not through arrogance, but through strategic self-advocacy. Through the simple, uncomfortable act of saying, this is what I have done, this is what I am worth, and this is what I expect. The nice person cannot do this, because self-advocacy feels like bragging, negotiation feels like confrontation, visibility feels like vanity, and so they stay in the shadows, doing excellent work that no one sees, while the person at the next desk, the one who does good work and talks about it, ascends. In relationships, the nice person is the one who gives endlessly and silently keeps score. They abandon their own preferences to avoid conflict. They tolerate disrespect because confrontation feels worse than swallowing their own dignity. They become the emotional caretaker of the relationship, absorbing their partner's moods while suppressing their own. And when the relationship eventually breaks, because it always does, because resentment is an acid that eats through every bond, they are left bewildered. I gave everything. How could this happen? It happened because you gave everything except the truth. You gave compliance instead of honesty. You gave accommodation instead of boundaries. You gave the appearance of peace instead of the reality of intimacy. And intimacy, real, deep, transformative intimacy, requires the willingness to be seen. Not the curated, pleasant, inoffensive version of you. The real you. The one with opinions and edges and needs and non-negotiable standards. In social interactions, the nice person is the chameleon. They mirror whoever they are with. They laugh at every joke. They agree with every opinion. They suppress their own perspective to maintain a frictionless surface. And on the outside, they appear well-liked, popular even. But the connections they build are shallow, paper-thin, because no one can truly connect with a person who never reveals themselves. You cannot bond with a reflection. You can only bond with a real face. So consider this. Every arena of your life, professional, romantic, social, is being sabotaged by the very quality you thought was saving you. Your niceness is not a gift you are giving the world. It is a price you are paying. And the bill is your power, your authenticity, your fulfillment, and your self-respect. But the coldest move has not been revealed yet, because everything I have told you so far is the diagnosis, the treatment, the transformation from nice to strategic, from passive to precise, from invisible to undeniable. That is what comes next. And if you have understood even half of what you have heard so far, then something inside you is already shifting. A quiet, dangerous awareness, a refusal that is forming in your chest, a voice that is saying, "Not anymore." Good. That voice is the beginning. Stay with me. The tactics are coming, and they will arm you with weapons that no amount of niceness could ever provide. There is one more thing I want you to see before we move forward. A pattern that connects all 5 mechanisms into a single, devastating cycle. The predator's calculation attracts exploiters. The erosion of authority strips you of the credibility to push back. The invisible contract fills you with resentment that you cannot express. The forfeiture of desire detaches you from your own ambition. And the identity trap convinces you that this diminished, accommodating version of yourself is who you actually are. Together, these 5 mechanisms form a cage that looks like a virtue from the outside, but feels like a coffin from the inside. And the most sophisticated element of this cage is that it is self-reinforcing. Each mechanism feeds the others. The more you accommodate, the more people expect accommodation. The more they expect, the more you give. The more you give, the less you have for yourself. The less you have, the more you resent. The more you resent, the more you suppress. The more you suppress, the more you lose yourself. And the more you lose yourself, the more desperately you cling to the only identity you have left. The nice one. Machiavelli saw this cycle in the political leaders of his time. The prince who tried to please everyone pleased no one. The ruler who avoided all conflict became a puppet of those who did not. The leader who spent his resources freely, his gold, his favors, his mercy, soon found himself impoverished and powerless, forced to tax his own people to replenish what he had given away to those who did not deserve it. The parallel to your life is exact. You have been spending your personal resources, your time, your energy, your emotional bandwidth, your self-respect, freely, indiscriminately, without strategy. And now you are depleted, running on fumes, wondering why you feel so empty despite giving so much. The answer is in the arithmetic. You have been operating at a deficit, pouring out more than you take in, and no kingdom, no empire, no human being can survive a perpetual deficit. But here is the powerful part. Here is the part that changes everything. The deficit is not permanent. The cycle is not unbreakable. The cage has a door, and the key, the one that Machiavelli forged 500 years ago and that I am now placing in your hand, is strategic self-interest. Not selfishness, not narcissism, not cruelty. Strategic self-interest. The recognition that you cannot give from an empty vessel, that you cannot lead from a position of self-neglect, that you cannot build anything meaningful on a foundation of self-betrayal. This is the transition point. This is where diagnosis becomes prescription. This is where understanding becomes action. Curious to know exactly how this transforms every area of your life. The most powerful tactics, the ones that will fundamentally alter how the world responds to you, are coming next. Now we move from understanding to action, because awareness without application is just entertainment. And you did not come here to be entertained. You came here to be armed. So let us build your arsenal, piece by piece, tactic by tactic, until the person who leaves this video is fundamentally different from the person who started it. Tactic 1. The doctrine of selective silence. Machiavelli understood that the most powerful weapon in any interaction is not what you say. It is what you withhold. Most nice people have a compulsive need to fill silence. The moment a conversation pauses, the moment tension begins to build, the moment the room gets quiet, the nice person rushes in. They explain. They justify. They soften. They apologize. They talk and talk and talk. Not to communicate, but to eliminate discomfort. Stop. From this moment forward, silence is your blade. When someone says something that does not sit right with you, do not react immediately. Let the silence stretch. Hold it. Let it breathe. Let the other person sit in it. Most people cannot tolerate silence. It makes them nervous. It makes them fill the void. And when they start filling the void, they start revealing their insecurities, their intentions, their position. Here is a specific scenario. Your colleague takes credit for your work in a meeting. The old you, the nice version, would either say nothing and seethe internally, or immediately confront them in a way that comes across as emotional and petty. The strategic you does neither. Instead, you wait. You let the moment pass. You let them enjoy their stolen credit for exactly as long as it takes for you to formulate a precise response. Then, at the right moment, perhaps later in the meeting, perhaps in a private conversation, perhaps in an email that leaves a written trail, you say calmly, clearly, and without emotion, I want to clarify the contributions on this project since there seems to be some confusion. No anger, no accusation, just surgical precision. That is the difference between being nice and being strategic. The nice person reacts. The strategic person positions. Let me give you another application. You are in a negotiation for a salary, for a contract, for anything. The other side makes their offer. The old you would immediately respond. You would either accept too quickly because saying no feels confrontational, or counter too eagerly because the silence feels unbearable. The strategic you does something that will feel deeply uncomfortable at first. You pause. You look at the offer. You say nothing. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. An eternity in negotiation time. And in that silence, the other person's confidence begins to erode. They start wondering if their offer was too low. They start preparing a better number. They start negotiating against themselves. All because you refuse to fill the void. Machiavelli would call this economy of expression. Do not spend words cheaply. Every sentence you speak, every reaction you give, every piece of information you reveal, these are currencies. And like all currencies, they lose value when you flood the market. The person who speaks least, but most precisely, is the one who commands the room. Not the loudest, not the most verbose, the most precise. Here is a practical exercise. In your next 5 conversations, reduce your words by 40%. Say only what is necessary. Let the rest live in the silence. Observe how differently people respond to you. Notice how they lean in. Notice how they begin asking for your opinion rather than assuming you will volunteer it. Notice how the weight of your words increases in direct proportion to the decrease in their quantity. Tactic 2. The art of the delayed response. Nice people respond immediately. Every text gets an instant reply. Every email gets an answer within minutes. Every request gets an immediate yes. And this immediacy, which feels like courtesy, is actually a surrender of power. When you respond instantly, you communicate several things simultaneously. First, that you have nothing more important to do. Second, that the other person's timeline is more important than yours. Third, that you are available on demand. And none of these signals inspire respect. Now, I am not telling you to play games. I am not telling you to wait 3 days to text someone back as some kind of childish power play. What I am telling you is this: respond on your schedule, not theirs. If you are in the middle of something, finish it before you reply. If a request requires thought, take the time to think before you answer. If someone is pushing you for an immediate decision, recognize that urgency as a tactic, because it almost always is, and refuse to be rushed. Here is a specific phrase that will change your life. When someone asks you for something and expects an immediate answer, say this: "Let me think about that and get back to you." That is it. 8 words. No explanation, no justification, no apology, just a calm assertion that your decision-making process has its own timeline. Watch what happens. Some people will respect it immediately. They will recognize that they are dealing with someone who is deliberate, thoughtful, not impulsive, not easily pressured. Others, and this is telling, will push back. They will say, "I need an answer now." Now, why do you need to think about it? It is a simple question. These are the people who have been benefiting from your immediacy. They have been profiting from your inability to pause. And your refusal to rush is the first sign that the old dynamic is shifting. Machiavelli observed that the leader who acts with too much haste makes errors that calm deliberation would prevent. He watched princes rush into wars, rush into alliances, rush into decisions that unraveled kingdoms. The common thread was always the same. Pressure from others overrode their own judgment. The strong leader, the one who endured, was the one who could withstand the pressure to act and choose instead the moment that served him best. Here is another practical application. The next time you receive a text that creates emotional urgency, a request disguised as an emergency, a guilt trip wrapped in a question, a demand for your time that arrives without warning, put the phone down. Wait 30 minutes, an hour. Not to punish the sender, but to give yourself the space to respond from strategy, not from reflex. You will be astonished at how often the emergency resolves itself without your intervention, and you will begin to notice how much of your life has been governed by other people's timelines instead of your own. Tactic. 3. The power of strategic disagreement. This is the one that will feel the most unnatural. Because if you are a nice person, disagreement feels like violence. It feels like rejection. It feels like the beginning of the end of a relationship. But here is the truth that Machiavelli understood and that you must internalize. Disagreement, expressed calmly and with conviction, is one of the most powerful respect-generating behaviors that exists. When you disagree with someone, not with hostility, not with contempt, but with clarity and confidence, you are communicating something that nice people never communicate. I have my own mind. I have my own perspective. And I value it enough to express it, even at the cost of your comfort. This does not mean you argue with everyone about everything. That is not strategy. That is belligerence. What it means is that when you genuinely see something differently, when your experience, your knowledge, your insight points to a different conclusion, you say so, directly, without hedging, without apologizing, without immediately offering a consolation prize to make the other person feel better. Here is the tactical framework. When you disagree, use this structure. State the disagreement. Provide the reason. Stop. Example: your manager proposes a strategy you believe is flawed. Instead of the nice response, "That is interesting, and I see what you mean, but maybe I could be wrong. Perhaps we could also consider. Try this. I see it differently." Based on the data from last quarter, that approach carries a significant risk. I would recommend this alternative instead. Does direct, clear, specific, no apology, no qualification, no hedging. Now here is the critical part. After you say it, stop talking. Do not fill the space with justifications. Do not backpedal. Do not soften. Let your statement stand. Let the room absorb it. Let the other person respond. And whatever they say, whether they agree, push back, or dismiss you, maintain your position calmly. Here is another scenario. A friend makes a plan that you do not want to participate in. The old you would say yes and cancel later. Or say yes and show up miserable. Or say maybe and hope the situation resolves itself. The new you says, I appreciate the invitation, but I am going to sit this one out. No excuse, no elaborate story about why you cannot make it, no apology, just a clean, honest decline. The first few times you do this, it will feel like you are pulling your own teeth. Your entire body will resist. Your mind will generate worst-case scenarios. They will be angry. They will think you are rude. They will stop inviting you. Let me tell you something. Some of them will, and that is the point. The people who leave because you started being honest were only there because you were lying. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves. Strategic disagreement is your lion. It is the roar that establishes your presence. The fox handles the silence, the timing, the positioning. The lion handles the moment of truth, the moment when you must stand and be counted. Tactic 4. The boundary as fortress. Every person who has ever been described as too nice has one thing in common: porous boundaries. Their personal space is not a fortress. It is an open field. Anyone can walk in, take what they want, and walk out without consequence. Starting today, you build walls, not walls of hostility, not walls of coldness, walls of clarity. A boundary is not a rejection of another person. A boundary is a declaration of your own value. When you say, I am not available after 8 in the evening, you are not saying, I do not care about you. You are saying, my time has a structure, and I honor it. When you say, I am not comfortable with that, you are not attacking the other person. You are informing them that you have a limit, and you expect it to be respected. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Boundaries will cost you people. Some people in your life exist there only because your boundaries are non-existent. They are there because you tolerate what others would not. When you start drawing lines, these people will push back. They will guilt you. They will call you selfish. They will accuse you of changing, and they will be right. You are changing. You are becoming someone who respects themselves enough to enforce their own terms. Let them go. Every person who leaves because you established a boundary was never there for you. They were there for what you gave them. And a relationship built on your self-sacrifice is not a relationship. It is a transaction in which you are perpetually losing. Machiavelli advised princes to fortify their cities before the siege, not during it. The time to build your defenses is now, when things are calm, when the pressure is manageable, when you can think clearly. Do not wait for the crisis. Do not wait for someone to push you to your breaking point. Establish your boundaries proactively. Communicate them clearly, and enforce them consistently. Here is a specific script for boundary setting that you can adapt to any situation. I understand your perspective, and I respect it. Here is where I stand. I need this particular thing to be different going forward. I'm confident we can find a way that works for both of us. But this point is not negotiable for me. Practice this. Say it in front of a mirror if you need to. Because the first time you deliver it in a real situation, every fiber of your nice conditioning will scream at you to take it back, to soften it, to apologize. Do not yield. Hold the line. The discomfort you feel is the old programming dying. Let it die. Tactic 5. The art of strategic generosity. Now, this is crucial because I am not telling you to stop being generous. I am not telling you to become cold, transactional, or withholding. I am telling you to make your generosity strategic. There is a vast difference between being generous and being exploited. Generous people give from abundance, with intention, and with boundaries. Exploited people give from emptiness, out of obligation, and without limits. The first creates loyalty. The second creates entitlement. Machiavelli himself wrote that wise leaders know when to be generous and when to be economical. Generosity that is scattered indiscriminately loses its value. It becomes expected. It becomes invisible. But generosity that is targeted, given at the right moment, to the right person, for the right reason, becomes unforgettable. It becomes leverage. Not leverage in a manipulative sense, but in the sense that targeted kindness creates bonds that indiscriminate accommodation never could. Here is the principle. Give when it creates genuine value, not when it alleviates your guilt. Give to people who have demonstrated that they value what you give, not to people who treat your giving as their right. Give in ways that reinforce your position, not in ways that diminish it. This means saying no to the colleague who always asks for favors, but never reciprocates. It means declining the invitation that you would only accept out of obligation. It means refusing to lend money to the person who has never repaid you. Not because you are cruel, but because your generosity is finite, and it deserves to be invested wisely, not wasted recklessly. Tactic 6. Rewriting your internal script. Every nice person carries a set of internal beliefs that operate like invisible chains. These beliefs sound like this. If I set a boundary, people will abandon me. If I disagree, people will think I am difficult. If I put myself first, I am selfish. If I am not accommodating, I am not a good person. These are not truths. These are scripts. They were written by your childhood, by your family dynamics, by the culture that shaped you. And they can be rewritten. Here is how. Every time one of these scripts activates, every time you feel the pull to be nice at the expense of your own interests, pause, recognize the script, name it, and then consciously choose a new one. Old script. If I say no, they will not like me. New script. If I say no, I am honoring my own priorities. The people who respect me will respect my no. Old script. I should not rock the boat. New script. The boat needs rocking, and I am allowed to be the one who rocks it. Old script. Being accommodating is being good. New script. Being strategic is being effective, and effectiveness serves more people than accommodation ever could. Old script. If I prioritize myself, I am selfish. New script. If I do not prioritize myself, I will have nothing left to give anyone. Self-neglect is not generosity. It is slow self-destruction. This is not positive thinking. This is cognitive restructuring. It is the deliberate replacement of beliefs that weaken you with beliefs that empower you. And it requires repetition. You did not become a people-pleaser overnight. You will not undo it overnight. But every time you choose the new script over the old one, you weaken the chain by one more link. And one day, sooner than you think, the chain will snap. Now let us talk about the mistakes that will sabotage your transformation if you are not careful. Mistake 1. Overcompensation. When nice people first begin to assert themselves, they often swing too far in the other direction. They go from being too soft to being too hard, from too accommodating to too aggressive, from doormat to bulldozer. This is not strategy. This is reaction. And reaction is never strategic. The goal is not to become the opposite of nice. The goal is to become calibrated, to develop the ability to read each situation and deploy the appropriate response. Sometimes the appropriate response is warmth. Sometimes it is firmness. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is confrontation. The strategist does not have a single mode. The strategist has a full spectrum and the wisdom to know which frequency to use. Mistake 2. Announcing the change. Do not walk into the room and declare, "I am not going to be nice anymore." Do not explain your transformation to the people around you. Do not seek their approval or their understanding. Just change, quietly, consistently. Let your behavior speak. Let the results accumulate, and let people draw their own conclusions. Machiavelli would approve of this deeply. He understood that the most powerful transformations are the ones that happen invisibly, The prince who announces his strategy gives his enemies time to prepare. The prince who simply executes without fanfare, without explanation, that prince wins before anyone realizes the battle has begun. Mistake 3. Expecting immediate results. Your reputation was built over years of nice behavior. It will not be reconstructed in a week. People will test your new boundaries. They will assume the change is temporary. They will push back, hoping the old, compliant version of you will resurface. Hold firm. The test is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are changing and the world is adjusting. Think of it this way. When a river changes course, everything downstream is disrupted. Banks erode, new channels form, the landscape reshapes itself. But eventually, a new equilibrium is established, one that follows the river's new path. You are the river. Your relationships, your career, your social life. These are the landscape. They will resist the change at first. They always do. But if you hold your course, they will reshape themselves around your new direction. Mistake 4. Confusing strategy with manipulation. There is a line between being strategic and being manipulative, and it is this: intent and transparency. The strategist acts with clarity of purpose. They are honest about what they want. They negotiate in good faith. They set clear terms. The manipulator deceives. They obscure their true intentions. They exploit trust. You are becoming a strategist, not a manipulator. You are learning to play the game with your eyes open, not to rig the game against others. And this distinction is not just moral, it is practical. Manipulation works in the short term, but collapses in the long term because it requires deception, and deception is unsustainable. Strategy, on the other hand, works indefinitely because it is built on clarity, consistency, and the genuine respect of others. Mistake 5. Abandoning compassion. This is perhaps the most important warning of all. You are not shedding your capacity for kindness. You are shedding the compulsion to deploy it indiscriminately. Kindness without discernment is not a virtue. It is a vulnerability. But kindness with discernment, kindness given deliberately, at the right time, to the right people, for the right reasons. That is one of the most powerful forces in the world. The transformation is not from kind to cold. It is from unconscious to conscious, from automatic to deliberate, from reactive to strategic. You are not losing your heart. You are gaining control over when and how you use it. Something has shifted in you by now. I can feel it through the screen. The old programming is cracking. The questions are forming. The resolve is building. This is the transformation that Machiavelli wrote about, not the transformation of the world, but the transformation of the self. The moment when the prince stops reacting and starts ruling. The moment when the pawn looks down at the board and realizes it has been moving itself all along. This is the final transformation. By now, something inside you has changed, and what comes next is where everything crystallizes. Close your eyes for a moment. I want you to see something. There are two versions of you. The first is the one you have been carrying for years, maybe decades. This version smiles on command. This version says yes to everything. This version absorbs the moods of everyone in the room and adjusts accordingly, like water filling whatever container it is poured into. This version is exhausted, not from hard work, not from discipline, but from the relentless labor of being someone you are not, the labor of filtering every word, the labor of suppressing every impulse, the labor of performing niceness so convincingly that you forgot it was a performance. Look at that version. Study it. Thank it for getting you this far. It did its best. It kept you safe when you were too young and too vulnerable to protect yourself any other way. And now let it go, because there is a second version. And this is the one that has been waiting behind every swallowed truth, behind every abandoned boundary, behind every moment where you chose their comfort over your integrity. This version does not smile on command. This version smiles when it means it. This version does not say yes to everything. This version says yes to what matters and no to what does not, clearly, calmly, and without apology. This version does not absorb the moods of the room. This version enters the room, and the room adjusts to it. This version is not cold. It is precise. It is not unkind. It is selective. It is not distant. It is sovereign. This is the Machiavellian transformation. Not the cartoon version, not the villain origin story. The real transformation, the one Machiavelli wrote about in his private letters, in the passages between the famous quotes, in the spaces where his philosophy was not about manipulation, but about mastery. Mastery of the self, mastery of the moment, mastery of the delicate, dangerous art of being both powerful and principled. And here is what happens when you become this version. In your professional life, people stop overlooking you, not because you demand attention, but because your presence demands it on its own. You walk into meetings with the quiet confidence of someone who has done the work and knows their worth. You speak less, but when you speak, the room leans in. You set your terms clearly, your compensation, your workload, your boundaries. And people respect them, not because you threatened consequences, but because your consistency has communicated that these terms are non-negotiable. You stop volunteering for tasks that no one else wants. Instead, you volunteer for tasks that showcase your strengths. You stop accepting every assignment passively. Instead, you negotiate timelines, resources, and support. You stop working late in silence. Instead, you make your contributions visible, not through boasting, but through clear, confident communication. You send the update email that summarizes what you accomplished. You speak up in the meeting when your work is relevant. You propose the initiative that demonstrates your vision. And something remarkable happens. The same people who overlooked you when you were the nice, quiet, endlessly accommodating one, they start paying attention. Not because you changed your skills, but because you changed your signal. In your relationships, something profound shifts. The people who were only there for what you gave them, they drift away. And at first, that loss stings. It feels like proof that your worst fear was right, that without your niceness, no one will stay. But watch carefully, because as the parasites depart, something unexpected happens. The people who remain, the ones who were always drawn to the real you, not the performance, they move closer. They trust you more, not less, because for the first time, they know that when you are kind, you mean it. When you say yes, you mean it. When you say you are fine, you actually are. Your relationships become deeper because they are finally built on truth instead of accommodation. Your partner no longer has to guess what you really think because you tell them. Your friends no longer have to decode your passive signals because you communicate directly. The people around you feel safer, not because you accommodate them, but because they know where they stand with you. Clarity, it turns out, is far more intimate than compliance. There is a specific moment you will experience, and I want you to be ready for it. It will happen in a conversation, maybe with a close friend, maybe with a family member, maybe with a partner. Someone will push against one of your new boundaries, and you will hold it. You will not cave. You will not apologize. You will simply calmly hold the line. And there will be a moment of tension, a moment where the old you would have collapsed, retreated, given in. But the new you will stay. And then, watch their face. Watch how the tension gives way to something that was never there before. Respect, real respect. Not the performative respect that nice people receive, the polite nod, the thank you that means nothing, the surface acknowledgement that masks complete indifference. But the deep, genuine respect that only comes when someone recognizes that you are a person of substance, a person with a center, a person who cannot be moved by pressure alone. That moment will be worth every ounce of discomfort it cost you to get there. In your social life, the dynamic transforms completely. You are no longer the chameleon. You are the anchor. People gravitate toward you, not because you mirror them, but because you give them something rare and magnetic, the experience of being in the presence of someone who is genuinely, unapologetically themselves. In a world full of performances, authenticity is not just refreshing, it is intoxicating. People crave it, and you have become the source. You become the person people seek out not for favors, but for perspective. Not for accommodation, but for honesty. Not because you always tell them what they want to hear, but because you always tell them what they need to hear. And that is a far more valuable role than the one you used to play. But let me tell you something that goes even deeper than tactics and outcomes. When you stop being nice and start being strategic, when you reclaim your voice, your boundaries, your right to disagree, your right to take up space, something happens that no external success can replicate. You start to feel at home in your own skin. The constant low-grade anxiety that has followed you for years. The anxiety of wondering if you said the right thing, if they are upset, if you are enough. It begins to dissolve. Not because you stop caring about others, but because you have finally started caring about yourself with the same ferocity. There is a physical sensation that comes with this, a settling, a grounding. As if for the first time in your life your feet are actually touching the earth instead of hovering above it, perpetually ready to move in whatever direction someone else dictates. You stand differently. You breathe differently. You occupy space differently, not more aggressively, more fully, as if you have finally given yourself permission to take up the room that was always yours. This is what Machiavelli was really pointing to, not the destruction of kindness, not the worship of power for its own sake, but the recognition that you cannot lead, cannot build, cannot create, cannot protect what matters from a position of self-abandonment. You must first secure your own fortress before you can defend the kingdom. You must first know your own mind before you can navigate the minds of others. You must first respect yourself before you can command the respect of the world. Let us consolidate what you have learned, not as a summary, but as a foundation, the pillars of your new architecture. Pillar 1. Niceness is not a virtue, it is a strategy, and usually a bad one. It was designed to keep you safe in environments where you had no power, but you are not in that environment anymore. You have outgrown it, and the armor that once protected you is now a cage. Pillar 2. The mechanisms of niceness. The predator's calculation, the erosion of authority, the invisible contract, the forfeiture of desire, the identity trap. These are not abstract concepts. They are operating in your life right now, in every interaction, every relationship, every moment where you choose compliance over truth. Now that you can name them, you can dismantle them. Pillar 3. The antidote is not cruelty, it is strategy, selective silence, delayed response, strategic disagreement, enforced boundaries, deliberate generosity, rewritten scripts. These are your weapons, not the weapons of a villain, the weapons of a sovereign. Pillar 4. The transformation is not instant, it is a practice. Every day, you will face the choice between the old script and the new one, between the comfortable performance and the uncomfortable truth, between being liked and being respected. Choose respect. Every time, even when it costs you, especially when it costs you. Because the price of respect is temporary discomfort, but the price of niceness is your entire life. Pillar 5. The goal is not to stop caring. The goal is to start choosing. Choosing who receives your generosity. Choosing when to speak and when to be silent. Choosing which battles to fight and which to walk away from. Choosing to invest in yourself with the same dedication you have spent investing in everyone else. And here is the paradox, the final revelation that ties everything together. When you stop being nice, you become more genuinely kind than you have ever been. Because niceness is not kindness. Niceness is compliance wearing the mask of kindness. Niceness is fear pretending to be love. Niceness is the easy, automatic, reflexive response that requires nothing of you. No thought, no courage, no discernment. But kindness, real kindness, is a choice. A deliberate, conscious, strategic choice. It is the decision to be generous when you could be withholding, to be compassionate when you could be indifferent, to be honest when you could be silent. And it is powerful precisely because it is chosen, not compelled. The nice person is kind because they are afraid not to be. The strategic person is kind because they have the strength to be, and the wisdom to know when, where, and with whom. This is the final lesson of Machiavelli. Not the lesson that history remembers, not the lesson that gets quoted in business books and self-help seminars. The deeper lesson. The one buried beneath 5 centuries of misunderstanding and willful misinterpretation. The strongest leaders are not the ones who have no capacity for kindness. They are the ones who have every capacity for both kindness and ruthlessness, and who choose deliberately between them based on what the moment demands. They are not slaves to either impulse. They are masters of both. This is what you are becoming. Not a person without compassion. A person whose compassion is weaponized, aimed with precision, deployed with purpose, and backed by the unshakable certainty that you deserve to take up space in this world. That your voice matters. That your boundaries are not suggestions. That your time is not a free commodity. That your presence is not something to be earned by accommodating everyone else. Machiavelli spent his final years writing, thinking, and distilling a lifetime of political observation into principles that would outlive him by centuries. He died in 1527, largely forgotten by the world he had tried to serve, but his ideas survived. They survived because they were true, not convenient, not comfortable, not nice, true. And now those ideas live in you, not as theory, not as intellectual entertainment, as practice, as the foundation of a new way of moving through the world. You will be tested. I promise you that. Tomorrow, next week, next month. Someone will push against your new boundaries. Someone will try to pull you back into the old pattern. Someone will say, "You have changed," as if it were an accusation rather than an achievement. And when that happens, you will feel the pull, the gravitational force of the old identity, the seductive comfort of compliance. Hold. Hold the line. Hold the silence. Hold the boundary. Hold the version of yourself that you have fought to become. Because here is the last truth I want to leave you with. The one that matters more than every tactic, every strategy, every Machiavellian principle I have shared with you today. The world does not need another nice person. The world is full of nice people, full of smiling, nodding, accommodating, invisible people who are dying quietly because they have never given themselves permission to live loudly. The world is drowning in compliance and starving for conviction, overflowing with agreement and desperate for someone, anyone, with the courage to say what they actually think. The world needs you, the real you, the one with the edges, the one with the fire, the one who knows when to speak and when to be silent, when to give and when to withhold, when to advance and when to hold the ground. Machiavelli would recognize you now, not the prince born to power, something far more dangerous, something far more rare. The one who was born without power and chose, deliberately, painfully, with full awareness of the cost, to build their own. That is the most dangerous person in any room. Not the one who inherited the throne, but the one who built it with their own hands, from the raw materials of their own suffering, their own awareness, their own relentless refusal to be what others wanted them to be. That is who you are now. If this message resonated with something deep in your chest, something that was there long before you pressed play, something that has been waiting for permission to emerge, then I want you to do something, not because I asked, but because this is the moment where the old version of you would scroll past, and the new version stops and declares. Comment below the phrase, "I choose to be strategic, not nice." This is not a comment. It is a declaration, a line drawn in the sand, a signal to yourself that the old contract has been torn up, and a new one that you wrote, one that serves you, one that reflects your true worth, has taken its place. It is the first brick in a fortress that no one else gets to tear down. And when you subscribe to this channel, understand what you are doing. You are not clicking a button. You are joining a lineage, a silent community of people who have looked at the truth without flinching and decided that they would rather be respected than liked, rather be powerful than popular, rather be sovereign than safe. This is a fortaleza, a fortress where we carry the weight of our own gravity instead of begging for the lightness of someone else's approval. This is where the ones who chose to see come to sharpen their blade. This is where the quiet ones find their roar. This is where niceness comes to die and strategy rises from its ashes. So go now. Walk back into your life, but walk differently. Walk with the precision of someone who chooses every step. Speak with the economy of someone who knows the weight of words. Decide with the deliberation of someone who answers to their own judgment and no one else's. Listen with the patience of someone who knows that silence reveals more than speech ever could. Let your silence be your shield, and your truth be your blade. Let your boundaries be your fortress, and your selectiveness be your crown. Let your presence be your authority, and your consistency be your legacy. And let this be the day. Not the day you became cruel, not the day you became cold, not the day you stopped caring, but the day you stopped apologizing for your own power. The day you stopped dimming your light so that others could feel comfortable in their darkness. The day you decided that your life was too valuable, too singular, too full of unrealized potential to spend one more second performing a version of yourself that serves everyone except you. Machiavelli knew it 500 years ago. Now you know it too. Go and let your strategy be your sovereignty, not your niceness be your prison. And may you build something that lasts, not because the world gave you permission, but because you stopped asking for it. The fortress is yours. The throne is yours. The game is yours. Play it well.